Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. So today I'm actually going to be doing two trailer breakdowns. So this will be the first one. I'll have another video out later on this evening. But the first trailer I'd like to break down is the first trailer that we've seen for Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Now, I am a big Tarantino fan. I've seen a majority of his films. Um, and some of his films are my all-time favorites. Reservoir stuff like Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction are amazing. Inglorious Bastards is hilarious. Just a lot of his stuff I really like, and it's mostly to do with the dialogue. But if I ever do a director commentary on him, I'll go into that. But this is the first trailer that we've seen from this film. All we'd really known about it so far was somewhat of the basic premise was that it was supposed to take place around the Manson murders in 1969 that happened in Hollywood, and also it was going to star Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio. Now, as we go into this trailer, he's kind of done something that he's done with like the Inglorious Bastards film, which was you put fictional characters in a real event. So the two leads, which is DiCaprio as Rick Dalton and Brad Pitt as Cliff Booth, both of those characters are not real. They are fictional and they are made up for the film. However, they are surrounded by real, actual characters that are played by other actors. Marvin Schwartz, who's a Hollywood producer, who's played by Al Pacino in the trailer. You also have Margaret Robbie playing Sharon Tate, who was murdered by the Manson family in '69 and who was married and pregnant at the time, and she was married to Roman Polanski. And then you also have other actors that are coming in. I forget his name exactly, but there was an actor who was playing Bruce Lee in this film, a lookalike to Bruce Lee, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So this is really it's an interesting film, but the aesthetic of the trailer says kind of everything about it, and it says a lot of good things because you start off in this trailer, you see this car driving by. It's the '60s, so you see all these like older 1960s cars, like an old VW Bug, and Cadillacs and stuff. And again, this is Hollywood. So we see all this stuff, and then one of the actually probably the best moments that kind of says it's the '60s is the car door opens up, which I'm assuming is DiCaprio's car, and you just see like a bunch of cigarette butts just fall out because there used to be ashtrays in the door. For people that don't remember that. And it was probably just he was just chain smoking and just putting butts in the door until it overflowed. It fell in between the seat, and then when you opened the door, it just came out. That's the other thing is there's a lot of smoking in this movie, which is what happened back then. A lot everybody smoked. Everybody smoked cigarettes, and I think that if you want to nail that '60s aesthetic, that's one thing you have to do is you have to make sure everybody's smoking. You have to kind of get that. The music in the trailer is again very '60s like. It's very hippie like. They kind of introduce you to the major players in this. They introduce you to DiCaprio and Pitt as Nash and or not Nash, but they introduce you to Rick Dalton and Cliff Booth. In the early parts of this, they're talking to Marv Schwartz about some film ideas. They show a few clips of DiCaprio playing him, which again they have kind of that movie within a movie thing that Tarantino does sometimes, like he did a little bit with Inglorious Bastards, where you see actually DiCaprio playing. It looks like he appears to be dressed as a Nazi, and he lights a bunch of Nazi guys on fire. It's supposed to be a film that he's in, but essentially the film appears to be following the ups and downs of DiCaprio's career, where he was really came up as an action star, and now he's trying to get into legitimate acting, and he's kind of sucking at it. And then you have his stunt double, who's pretty much his best friend, who's Cliff Booth, who is kind of encouraging him to do this stuff. I'm assuming there'll be some interaction between Booth and the guy who's playing Bruce Lee through some portion of the film, because they do show a bit of like a bout where I think the line they put over it is you can do anything to him, to Bruce Lee, to do whatever he wants to Brad Pitt. But over the film we kind of develop, so we the first part of it is kind of introducing us to DiCaprio and Pitt, and then we go into Sharon Tate, and this is where it kind of gets interesting because the first part of it just feels like, all right, this is kind of a period piece. It's 60s Hollywood. It's a little scummy. You got these two guys that are kind of up and coming, and then you go over to Margaret Robbie, and she literally says in the trailer, "I'm Sharon Tate," and she's going to see a movie that she's in, and Sharon Tate was an actress, and uh, then you go into this other stuff where you start seeing Brad Pitt's character apparently gets into contact with some members of the Manson family, Charles Manson's cult that's out in the Hollywood Hills. And that's when this movie really kind of gets into that subject matter, is you get to see that. And the one thing that's going to be really interesting about this is Luke Perry plays Charles Manson in this film. And for those who've been following the news, Luke Perry passed away in March of this year after complications, I believe, with a stroke. I could be wrong about that. But he did pass away, and I believe this is going to be his last on screen performance. So it would be very interesting to see his take on a Charles Manson character. I don't necessarily know if this. How far this film goes and what it's going to graphically show, but they do show at the end. They show, they have this line that's overlaid by, I think it's DiCaprio, where he says anything can happen in Hollywood, and it's kind of the overlay. But what they're implying is that the Manson family is going to murder Susan Tate and all the people in the Polanski Tate household at the end and commit those murders. That's what we see kind of at the end of the trailer. But throughout most of it, the tone I feel like is perfect. I think DiCaprio is going to do a really good job in this. He seems to be able to pull off. He has like kind of a southern draw. He seems to be able to pull off that very well. I enjoy the way that he interacts with Brad Pitt. I kind of like the overlay of real people in this. Again, it has a lot of the same type of feel in terms of just adapting something to an environment as Inglorious Bastards did. Even though Inglorious Bastards, essentially all the characters were fictional, just about, except for Adolf Hitler and a few other extenuous characters. But in this one, again, you're working with really two fictional characters, and everybody else was a real person. So the only thing that I kind of have a question about with this is because Tarantino likes to do his own thing, no matter what. And even if he was taking a direct approach to this to explain the Manson family murders or something like that, then I feel like it would still have some kind of his flair to it. There would still be stuff that you could tell was his. But it seems kind of odd, just considering that it's different when you're telling a story about a bunch of Jewish soldiers that go and assassinate Hitler. I mean, it was funny, it was good, it was actiony, it was bloody, but again, that's something that you can play around with from a narrative perspective. But this is something from 1969. Some of the people that were involved in it are still alive, and as well, the people that were affected as well as the murderers, and it feels very odd, especially because this is almost like a hometown thing for Tarantino, because the victim was the pregnant wife of another director who is still alive, in Roman Polanski. Now, Roman Polanski, I think, is a very good filmmaker. I think he is a sleazebag human. Uh, and I think he should have been put in jail for what he did do. But at the same time, it feels like Tarantino's stepping on toes, and that's very uncharacteristic for people in Hollywood to kind of step on each other's toes. And that's why I think a lot of these movies about stuff in Hollywood, a lot of it's from back in the 40s and the 50s, stuff that wouldn't affect anybody nowadays. But this is kind of on that cusp at this point. Maybe if this was like 10 years later, like 2029, something like this came out, then maybe people would think a little differently about it. But at this point, it's still kind of close to home, if you want to look at it that way. So it is very interesting to see that take from Tarantino. And to be fair, Tarantino probably does not give a single solitary fuck what people think about his film. He's going to make the film that he wants to make, and generally it's going to be entertaining because Tarantino is a good filmmaker. But we're gonna have to see, if when a second and a third trailer come out for this, because it is coming out in July. I expect at least one more trailer to come out for it, a legitimate trailer, because this one is a bit late. Because again, it's almost June, so we're probably looking at like a month and a half at the most. So I'll link the trailer in the description for anybody that wants to watch it. Thank you for tuning in, and remember that any thoughts on this movie you can put right in the comments. And if you like it, if you don't like it, are you excited for this, for Tarantino? Are you kind of curious about what this is going to be like? And remember to hit the bell for notifications, hit the like button, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?